So my name is Brittany. I'm a postdoc at the Bioeconomy Chair, and my current research is looking at agroecology, which is both a practice and a movement and a science, all three, and how that relates to Indigenous food knowledge and practices in South Africa. So I think I grew up with an overdeveloped sense of justice, although as a child I would have used the words what is fair and unfair, and it never went away. And so obviously I look at the world and see a phenomenal amount of injustice and feel motivated to do something about it. And then for me, food is sort of the lens through which I see the world and virtually any issue. I initially sort of studied intellectual and cultural history and comparative literature. That history that I was studying was actually also through the lens of food, looking at things like gender and colonialism through cookbooks from, Victorian England or post-Spanish Civil War Spain. And so the seeds were there long ago, but then there was a long and winding road through some other fields. Then the PhD looked at food sovereignty and urban agriculture. And then that raised more questions around people's understanding of the food system and their reliance on industrial food when they had grown up in rural areas eating traditional foods. So it just sort of keeps evolving naturally. I got very excited about participatory action research when I first learned about it and was convinced that I wanted my research itself to be impactful, not afterwards when I wrote it up, but the very process of doing the research should be empowering for the participants, should be guided by the participants, and whether or not any article came out of it, just that process alone would have meaning and impact. Some of the decolonial and feminist ideas around things like reciprocity are very important. So if I go and engage with people and they're sharing their time and knowledge with me, can I share some time and knowledge with them or something else that they need? Academic articles feel to me the least impactful, but I try to write in the mainstream media to bring these ideas out of academia and into the public domain. I try to engage with policymakers, which sometimes perhaps has an impact and other times not so much. I think I draw on anything that serves me, sort of I call it methodological bricolage, which sounds like jargon, but I'm like a crow picking up scraps of shiny things from anywhere I find them if they can be useful in making my nest. With a background in history and comparative literature and a bit of economics and a bit of geography and a bit of development, it's all over the show. Beyond those, sort of the knowledge that comes from outside of the academy, which, obviously Indigenous knowledge is that. That's, land-based experiential knowledge, embodied knowledge, practical knowledge, is often extremely valuable and very pertinent in studying food. And since those knowledges have been deliberately marginalized for so long, also empowering people who hold them to feel that their knowledge is important and that it is equally or more valuable than other forms of knowledge. So positionality is complicated always, but perhaps extra complicated in a country like South Africa, where inequality is so extreme, and I come from outside of this country and generally don't speak most of the Indigenous languages. Often I think there are people much better placed than I am to be doing the work that I'm doing. And I would be very happy for them to come along and do it. So call out to students if you want to come do this work. I think the best I can do without being able to change my identity is to be extremely sensitive to my position, to my outsider status, to my position of privilege, and try to minimize the distance that causes with the people that I engage with, and build bridges across it, and then also occasionally see if there are ways that I can employ that privilege in the service of those who don't have it. But there are ways to potentially use some of the awkward parts of my position in the service of the general kinds of change I would hope to see from my research.